You and the rest of the committee here for advancing my bill S-4399. This is the Geese House Site Conveyance Act. I'm pleased that we've been able to move it out of committee this morning, but I do find it somewhat disheartening to see that what should be a non-controversial measure received a wholly partisan vote. From what I hear from the ranking member in your initial comments, the concern is not so much on the substance of the matter, but that we have not paired taking lands out of the federal estate with other conservation matters. I understand that the chairman's challenges in trying to advance bills through this committee with a little bit of parity. I get that, and yet sometimes, as he has indicated, there are matters that are so very local, so very parochial, and maybe there's just more that accumulate on our side than on the other side. That's obviously a discussion that the chairman and the ranking member have as you set agendas, but I would like to just share with colleagues who may feel that that they have concerns based on substance as opposed to the construct of the measures that we worked to advance this morning. This is not something that is new. Once again, we're seeking to address failures within the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act that was passed back in 1971 to address aspects of that settlement that have not yet been fulfilled. So we are building, this legislation is building on decades of work by Doyon to fulfill their land entitlement. The Geese House site is a sacred site for the Athabascan people who have called this land home for millennia. After the passage of ANCSA, the Native Claims Settlement Act in '71, Doyon initiated a pretty aggressive effort to help identify the significant sites and ensure conveyance of lands with historic and cultural importance. And it was through this process that the Geese House site was identified, and then Doyon formally filed its selection in 1978. So we're going back a long ways, folks. But then in 1980, what happens? We have ANILCA, which is the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act that was passed by Congress. And in that act, it established the boundaries of the Denali National Park and Preserve. So you have Doyon that is acting to complete their selection of sacred and historic sites. ANILCA comes in, overlays on top of that. And so there has been, again, a decades-long effort by Doyon to secure the Geese House site. And then last administration, in the Biden administration, the National Park Service determined that the conveyance was going to require an act of Congress. Up to that point in time, there had been efforts to try to advance it through the administrative process. Park Service comes back and says, you got to legislate. So here we are. Nearly 50 years after the site was selected, the conveyance remains unfulfilled. To the merits of the selection itself, this bill would facilitate the transfer in the form of a parcel. It's, as the ranking member has noted, it's a little shy of 22,000 acres. It's 21,750 acres. But it fulfills the commitments that were established under ANCSA to provide for the conveyance of culturally significant and historic lands. And it wasn't that Doyon just kind of willy-nilly said, we want this section. They worked with the Park Service. They got feedback from the Park Service it allows for clear and manageable boundaries for the Park Service to continue the administration of the lands across the whole preserve, but it also establishes protection for cultural sites and ensures that Doyon can secure reasonable access to the site. We did this in consultation with the local tribes, with the communities, many of which have provided resolutions in support for the conveyance. And we have had opportunities within this committee over the years to talk about the significance of what it means within these native lands to ensure that we are protecting sacred sites and culturally historic sites. And we certainly saw that with the ranking member's passion when it came to Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. There was, at that time, working with the last administration, a public land order withdrawing more than 336,000 acres surrounding Chaco National Historic Park. And so that was an effort where, again, I certainly respected the ranking member's desire and what he sought to do with those protections for the cultural sites. Some have suggested that this 21,000 acres is too large and we need to narrow it down. But again, I'm looking back to Chaco. That was about 34,000 acres. Excuse me, that was 336,000 acres in an area that's only about 34,000. So the concern that we're hearing is that this is too much. And again, as I related in the last committee markup when we were moving the landless bill, part of the challenge that we have in Alaska is that so much of our lands are held in the federal state, roughly 223 million acres of federal lands. And so when we need to try to make reasonable adjustments, we've got to come to Congress to do so. So when you put the Geese House conveyance into perspective, Denali National Park and Preserve spans more than 6 million acres, and the land that we're talking about conveying is less than 0.5%. It's 0.36%, to be exact. We also strictly limit the conveyance by prohibiting mining. We protect the site's cultural significance, and we bar transfer of it to anyone other than the United States. So what we're trying to do here is, again, ensure that the land that was faithfully stewarded by the area's native people for thousands of years can again be managed by and for them. We would maintain that this conveyance is not excessive, and it's deliberately sized to avoid revealing the exact sacred site in a public manner. So I'm again pleased that we've been able to move it out of committee, but I would hope that given the protections that we establish in this legislation and the work carried out to develop the selections in coordination with the Park Service and with good support from the communities in the region, that we will be able to work together in a reasonable manner and find full agreement to return the Geese House site to the Athabascan people before the end of this Congress. So I'm happy, Mr. Chairman, to work with anyone on this committee, obviously on both sides of the aisle, to give further clarification, answer any questions or concerns, but I am pleased that we were able to advance it this morning.